Hey guys, editor Peter here. My camera actually died midway into the talk with Brandon, so what I'll be doing for the second half of the video is filling it in with B-roll.
You want me to talk into the camera?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay. My name is Dr. Brandon Stark. I'm the director of the UC Center of Excellence on Unmanned Aircraft System Safety. More or less the drone czar of the UC system. So if you're using drones either here at San Diego or Berkeley or at Davis or Merced or anywhere within the UC system, you're working through either myself or here at UC San Diego, we have Eric DeLucian, who handles the majority of the drone use here at UC San Diego.
Perfect. And then, hi, my name is Peter, and then I'm meeting with Brandon today. So we'll just be having more of a casual conversation.
Yeah.
Geez, I was like wondering if there's more FPV pilots around campus too. This whole thing was like really exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh man, I finally get to meet more people who are like in the kind of thing with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have a lot of FPV pilots. You know, within the UC system, again, a lot of our drone use is very heavily geared towards the research applications.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in my flight records, 2/3 of our flight records for drone use
Mm-hmm.
is in environmental or agricultural use cases.
Gotcha.
Right? And they're the guys who are flying drones every week or every other week at a mission site, you know, data collection for long-term, you know, seasonal monitoring and things like that. So they rack up the hours a lot, very quickly. UC San Diego does get a lot of drone use here, but, you know, environmental purposes, agricultural, they rack up the hours quite a bit. Of the FPV users, they're almost exclusively within the film units, right?
Yeah.
So campus media departments, every campus handles their media differently. At some campuses, there is just one unit that does media for the entire school.
Okay.
Other campuses, you know, Berkeley is very much like this, where each department or each school, college, however they, you know, separate things out, has their own media unit.
Gotcha.
And that's very similar to how they have things here. San Diego's a little bit more separated out department-wise than some of the other campuses. And so we have lots of, you know, videographers, you know, in each unit. And they do pull out the FPV drone on occasion, but it's usually only for a handful of minor shots from specific you know, scenes or specific, you know, visualizations. So there's not like a huge amount of demand at the FPV scale.
Gotcha.
Not to say that, you know, it isn't great footage. It really is.
It is.
Right?
It is. It's fantastic.
You get some real fun stuff. You know, we do building walkthroughs with FPV, but, you know, that only happens, you know, once the building is online and just, you know, the building hasn't been opened yet. They fly the drone through to get that. Here's what it feels like to go through the building. We did an interesting FPV use case at one of the reserves out in the desert, using FPV drones to kind of mimic the behavior of some of the small hummingbirds. As a way to kind of visualize what it would be like to be a hummingbird, to tell that story of research. But again, you know, that's a one-off. I think we did that maybe 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Right. It doesn't happen all the time.
Gotcha. So,
But in the student clubs, though.
yeah, student club.
Yeah, it's all FPV racing.
Okay,
Right.
it's mostly just FPV racing. Gotcha.
We have drone racing at Berkeley. At Davis, they've done some drone racing before. At Merced. I don't recall of any drone racing here at San Diego, but I wouldn't be surprised. UCLA has a drone racing group, or at least did. And they, you know, they come and go. Student organizations come and go, but that's always just a fun way to, you know, kind of be involved with FPV racing, especially as it comes down to building and tinkering.
Oh yeah.
With the drones.
That's the fun part. That's the fun part.
As long as you enjoy that part, right?
I'm getting into it. I'm getting into it.
Oh, there's so much that you could do and, you know, go with that, right? Have you done any of the drone racing simulations and the drone racing groups and things like that?
I've been getting into it. This is actually my first year of actually getting into FPV.
Okay.
So
Oh, you're just starting out on your
I'm just
journey.
starting out. Early on, it was starting off with a simulator called Liftoff, and from there, I put in like 30 hours of practice, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to try flying. And then that's when I initially put in my flight request, and Eric is like, hey, by the way, like, you have your Part 107, you have all these things, are you meeting this criteria? I was like, oh no, this is my first time. So
Eric's too nice.
he's very nice. He put in a lot of faith in me. I was like, oh man, I just can't, I gotta honor that. So yeah, it's my first year, and I'm still kind of like gathering information about it because it's still like really niche, especially as a media major here. I wanted to like incorporate the drone stuff, but like also like get to know the community in a way.
Okay.
So this is like very new to me. Meeting people or other pilots was actually really interesting, and I also like I've always had like a lot of questions for Eric, and I also might actually
yeah, you can ask me
some
those
questions too if you don't mind.
Of course, of course.
So let me just pull up my notes really quickly. So I have like some niche stuff. Eric's answered some of these before, but I'm also curious to hear your opinion about it. So what are like the behind the scenes process? Like if a pilot puts in a flight request, like what do you have to do? What is the process like for you as a director?
I mean, it is very contextually dependent on where, what, why, when, and all the little details that goes. They're really, in the standard processes, we see it and we figure out, okay, do we need to find other approvals that we need to get? Do we need to notify people? Are we doing things legally, safely, right? I mean, it's just kind of this checklist of if everything is good, I mean, it's really just a rubber stamp. But that's if we're doing farmland. Farmland is almost like an auto rubber stamp. As long as they're not interfering with air traffic or anything like that, that's easy to approve.
Gotcha.
But when we start talking about flying on campus,
Yes, campus.
Campus is where it gets complicated. It really does.
Okay.
So drone rules and regulations. If we're doing anything for media purposes, it has to be 107. If we're doing it for recreational or classroom activities, then we can do the exemption for that.
Gotcha.
So that's the first thing. Do you have a license? If you're doing this for media, it's almost always we need the 107.
Okay.
And then we look at the location. It's easy to approve if we're 100 feet away from everything.
Okay.
But the closer that we are, the more that we need to think about, okay, how many roads are we going to be impacting? How many people are we going to be impacting? Are we going to be impacting ADA compliance? We did a project at UC Santa Cruz, and the contractor that came in with a drone, he decided to block the bridge, and that was an ADA violation. I mean, that could have been a lawsuit.
For you guys as well,
For
right?
us, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about all those things. And so with drone stuff, flying the drone is the easy part.
Yeah.
Where we fly the drone that worries us. Now, that's not true in all cases. We do have drones with chainsaws and big 150-pound drones, and we have a super expensive drone up in Oregon right now. So we do worry about some of those other things, but a lot of times where we fly the drone is the biggest challenge for us to figure out. How do we make sure that it's done legally and safely? And I can show you so many videos of drone injuries and accidents.
I've seen a lot of failures.
We've set fields on fire. We almost sparked a major wildfire at a state park last summer.
Oh gosh.
Right? We worry about these things.
I'm totally with you on that one. Lipo fires is a huge one on my list. It's like, I got to make sure everything is safe.
And it should be. Now, I mean, there's a lot of ways to make sure that we're good and we're safe. And if we're flying in a grass lawn, I'm not worried about a lipo fire. But if I'm at a state park with dried grass everywhere, I'm very worried about a lipo fire. In the canyons here at San Diego, especially in the summertime, there are a lot of dried grasses. We're a little worried there, but at the same time, they do a lot of fire mitigation. It's not as high of a risk as we'd say, the grassland reserves up in Central Valley or in Davis, where you set that one on fire, and the winds are just going to take it for miles. Right? We worry about that a lot.
No, I get you.
And
I get you.
LiPos aren't the only thing that's going to spark your fire, too.
What
So
else could spark
it's the sparking of the energy. So the battery could be fine, but if you've got loose wires on your ESCs,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
that's going to spark a fire. Or if you just got a bad power connection. We had a Matrice 200 that exploded in midair.
Exploded.
It was
Loose wiring?
flying, and then all of a sudden flames shot out of it.
Oh gosh.
Bad wiring on the payload connector caused that one. So it's
That's-
wherever the power system is where we need to be concerned about fire-wise. Not just the battery, but wherever that
Power
battery
system.
leads to.
Okay, gotcha. So, double check the wiring. Gotcha.
Double check the wiring. Find ways to minimize the risk. FPV stuff I'm not too worried about. That's small. It's not going to have a major energy release. But when we talk about
Some of the bigger drones that are like
Big
over
drones,
55 pounds or like around that size, right? Or
anything over 5 pounds.
anything over 5. Okay, gotcha.
Right. Once we start talking about bricks of battery,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
and that's not always a big drone, right? I've got a FreeFly Astro. It's a fairly big drone. It's about the size of this table, weighs about 12, 13 pounds, and they've got bricks of batteries, 400 watt hours. Yeah, about 400 watt hours combined.
Okay.
And that's more than enough to have a major release of energy that's going to immediately spark. Bigger the energy, the bigger the spark, the more likely that we're going to spark a fire.
Gotcha.
So your little smaller ones,
Smaller one is all right.
it's
Not
nothing.
as
It's not as
to the
worrisome.
extent
Yeah,
of
right.
a 5 pound or bigger,
Yeah.
but it's
I
still
mean, you could, if you had wires, you could spark the leads for that, and it's not going to create a big arc, right? Have you ever accidentally done that yet?
I burnt an ESC.
Yeah, and you sparked it, but I mean, you don't see a giant blue arc of energy,
Yeah, no, not yet.
right? So the little batteries, they don't have enough output to create that big spark that's going to immediately cause a fire, but the
Gotcha.
big batteries do.
Okay, I gotcha.
If you want to minimize fire, stay small.
Stay small. Perfect. They also following the flight request. Another thing is the UC insurance policy.
Yes.
Like, how does it work for students, and can students qualify for that insurance policy?
Yeah, so our insurance policy, and this is a little bit tricky with the way that the university operates just in general.
Okay.
So the university and its staff are considered part of, the corporation-ish of the Regents of the University of California, which is a designated governmental entity in the California state law.
Okay.
Students are not considered part of the Regent
Gotcha.
organization. You're essentially a third party. You have a lot of rights, but legally you are a separate entity from the university.
Okay.
And it plays to many things within academia. If you in any of your classes invented something,
Okay.
you own that, not the university. But if I as a staff invent something, the university owns it,
Okay.
right? So you've got that legal separation of your students,
And then staff.
and then we have the university.
Gotcha.
So, but there's a lot of challenging overlap between there, right?
That's where that's what I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out as a student.
If you're doing stuff as a class, as a academic exercise, as a coursework, curriculum, things like that, that is clearly, and student as well as registered student organizations, you are separate from the university, and you're not covered by university insurance policies.
Gotcha.
But everything belongs to you. All the good and the bad belongs to you.
Gotcha.
Where we get into the challenging part is, well, what do we have when we have student employees?
Yeah, that's my next point, actually.
Right,
I also
we have
asked Eric the same question, too.
Student employees do become, at the time of your employment, you're part of the university. But as
Okay.
soon as you're off clock, now you're a student again. So you're
Gotcha,
constantly
gotcha.
bouncing back and forth.
Gotcha.
So when you are doing things as part of a department paid project through a university contract or employment, then you're covered by university insurance.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But when you're doing something through the student government, through the registered student organizations, or through coursework or curriculum, then you're not covered.
Gotcha.
Now, there's one other exception here, too.
I was gonna
that-
also ask that too.
If you're part of a classroom activity, you're covered through the classes insurance program,
Okay.
but only through the activity of that particular class.
So it's a unique circumstance in a way.
It's real funky.
Okay. Gotcha, gotcha.
The times that this worries us, like if you were in like an engineering class and you were building and flying drones, for that class you're covered.
Okay.
In a capstone-like setting where you're getting units, but you're not doing coursework material, then it's very dicey and gray area. And it very much depends on the context of your drone operation.
Okay.
Right. We're getting into the real nitty-gritty details,
Yeah.
and it's
No,
real
that's totally
complicated,
fine. That's
and
totally
it's-
fine. This is
it's
perfect
challenging.
for future pilots as well.
This is definitely why, why we have this system too, is because we don't want you to assume that you have insurance when you don't have insurance. And hopefully Eric's, keeping you on top of, when you're doing this as an RSO or as a independent person versus when you're doing this as student employment. Because that's a very important distinction that we have to keep track
usually
of.
the first thing Eric asks me. What are you doing it for? Are you
Exactly.
doing it under somebody? Did someone hire you? Are you doing it as a student? Are you doing it for a student org? That's usually the first questions he asks me.
Good, because that's one of the first keys that we have to work with.
Gotcha.
Because that also plays into what permissions that we can get, and what's the general acceptance of that drone. At many campuses, we don't even let registered student organizations fly on campus except at designated fields.
Gotcha.
So if you were at UC Irvine, we have the drone field.
And then you're totally fine if you just go fly.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But if you want to do any sort of media stuff, only media can do drone flying on the rest of campus.
Okay.
Or constructions or research, right? But if you were like a student media, we just have the drone field for all students.
Students.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That also, going back to some of the rules and regulations. So, is it possible to fly over campus property? So, for example, I've seen in some YouTube videos of, it's way older though, where people fly above campus buildings. Is that still possible?
So it's legal, safe, all these challenging questions that you're asking, right? So, we do have the university policy, and the extent of the university policy is whenever you are standing on university land, you are subject to the university policy.
Gotcha.
So that does introduce loopholes. What if you were standing on the other side of the street?
Outside the
Technically,
campus
we don't
boundaries.
have the authority of the control under the university drone policy.
Okay.
But if you're interfering with university activities, we do have the overarching university policy of you can't be disruptive to university activities no matter where you are.
Gotcha.
And so we don't run into that too often, but we do. Not necessarily, maybe Eric knows more examples of here at UC San Diego, but this really comes into play at our nature reserves.
Nature reserves.
Where people start flying
Outside
drones
from
outside.
And then they would come into the boundaries of...
Come into the boundaries, and not just that they're coming into the boundaries, but they're disturbing nests, right? They're getting
Wildlife.
too close to wildlife, and we do have legal obligations for conservation efforts at these reserves.
Okay.
And so we do have, some authority with the California federal or California state wildlife, to enact fines if people start disturbing wildlife.
Okay.
Now that's separate from the drone policy. That's a wildlife disturbance policy. And then there's also things of, we really hate it when people disrupt commencement,
Oh, okay.
right? And other major events and
That's a
things like
first for
that.
me.
Have you seen that happen? I know it's happened at least once or twice here at UC San Diego.
Not that
but
I'm
it
aware
does
of.
happen at commencement ceremonies, as big events.
Mhm.
People fly a drone, and then we've got to send PD to go track them down. Sometimes they're off campus, but even if they're off campus, if they're disturbing that event, right? That's no good.
No good. No go.
Now, if they're not disturbing event, right, the disruption of the event is the legal hook that we have.
Okay.
So if they're flying over campus and they're not disrupting campus, no one really notices. We don't like it, but it's not necessarily illegal.
It's like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Fly over.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha.
And who's to say that if we catch you intentionally, skirting around the rules and regulations, if you then try to ask for us for permission later, well, we're probably not inclined to give that to you.
Gotcha.
There are some people on our blacklist.
I see.
Right.
Hopefully,
some people
none of the
that
future pilots are on that.
we've not enjoyed dealing with, and because they're intentionally trying to skirt around rules and regulations and the policies, and we're trying to help manage multiple things. We like drones, we really do, but there's a time and place for them.
There's a lot of responsibilities.
There's
and
a lot of
risks to take into
responsibilities
consideration.
and risks, and there's other factors that go into drone use. We get that a lot around campus housing.
Okay.
Yes, it might be legal to fly near a dorms or next to someone's window,
Right, but you shouldn't do
we
that.
really shouldn't be doing that. We like to make sure that we have separation
There's
and
like
distance.
an expectation to privacy, so
Yeah.
you shouldn't even be there in the first place.
And while that's not in law, right, we still don't like it. Right?
Totally understand it.
So the legal restrictions on privacy implications is almost exclusively on when there is an event, but we like to be proactive and make sure that there isn't the possibility of an event of someone inviting privacy.
Gotcha. That also, just for my next question, is for recreational flights. I haven't necessarily requested much for recreational flights, but how different is it from a 107 flight?
Yeah, so if we don't have a university purpose to that recreational flight, it varies at every campus. Some campuses just say no.
Okay.
Other campuses say, here's your flying zone. We have a nice field at UC Davis. We say, hey, if you want to fly a drone, go fly in the drone zone.
Gotcha.
And so every campus is different. That's going to be very much a question for Eric on what he wants, where he wants to send the registered student organizations and the recreational drone flyers. I know that he's probably, of the campus people, more lenient. We have some real strict people at the other campuses.
Gotcha. We got it lucky.
You're really lucky to have Eric here.
No,
he really does care.
I appreciate it.
Because at some other campuses, like UCLA, is just no recreation except for this one field.
Gotcha.
UC Berkeley, no recreation on campus. You got to go to this area, and it's only for registered student organizations. And they have a check-in process for that.
Okay.
So many times, if you just want to fly around for fun, I tell you to go find a park.
Gotcha.
And oftentimes, the local parks are probably a better place for you anyways.
Gotcha. For my next question, it's going to be more of a scenario.
Okay.
So say, for example, I am an authorized pilot flying for an event on campus. What if an unauthorized pilot flies their drone into the same airspace?
Oof, I hate that.
What's the scenario? how does this work, and how do we mitigate some of the risks with this?
It's hard to predict that people are going to violate and track them down ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
So if you do run into that, and we have, it's happened to me.
Okay.
I'm flying around UC Merced for a film shoot, and then someone else is DJI Mini starts flying overhead. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Okay.
And I call campus PD, and they go track them down.
Gotcha.
And I point out to our PD that, it's not too hard to follow the drone. Eventually, the drone is going to go back to the pilot.
Down. Yep.
Right. So all you have to do is just keep an eye on the drone, see where it lands, and then go talk to the people there.
Gotcha.
But I mean, that's really all that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
While we do have remote ID out there, it's not the greatest for especially the drones that are most pertinent to us, which are the really small ones.
Mm-hmm.
DJI Minis, if they have the small battery, don't have remote ID. Right.
Okay.
The Neos, the Flips, under 250 grams, they don't have remote ID. We can't track them. Right. So if you do encounter someone else's drone interfering with you, again, that becomes that interference thing again. If they're interfering with your university business, we have legitimate cause to say, please stop wherever you are, even if you're off campus.
Okay. Gotcha. And then just say like worst case scenario, like there's a crash. How does it affect me as a pilot that's authorized?
You've crashed a drone?
Or like say for example, if we're both sharing that airspace, right? And I'm not expecting this person flying their drone. So I'm an FPV pilot and I'm unaware that there's a drone in the airspace and we crash or collide mid-air.
Okay,
What's
you've
the
added
scenario?
a number of wrinkles in here.
Yeah.
So let's start with the easiest one. You're flying around non-FPV for university business and you crash it into a building.
Okay.
Easy case. That's fine. It happens.
Okay.
We do have drone insurance coverage. And if it's a university-owned drone, we have drone replacement insurance.
Okay.
Now, probably not at the scale that's going to be useful for you. We have a $1,000 deductible.
Okay.
Which is a little bit high for a small drone.
Yep.
But we do have $40,000 drones. And that deductible makes sense for that. So if you're crashing a drone for university business and it's a university-owned drone, well, that's what we have insurance for, and that's what we try to protect against. And that's fine. It happens.
Okay.
We crash about 10, 15, 20 drones a year. It happens.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, you crash a drone, and now we've hit a person.
Yeah.
We've scrubbed up their face, and now they're all bleeding and things like that. We do have liability coverage for that.
Gotcha.
So if you're doing drone activities for university business, you're automatically covered with liability insurance, even if it's your own personal drone.
Gotcha.
Right. So if you're using one of your FPV drones and media department has you as a student employee and you're flying for your employment, we'll have you covered for liability.
Gotcha.
But we won't have you covered for drone replacement because it's your own personal drone. So that one's fine. We don't want you to hit anyone in the face.
Definitely not.
Please don't.
Last thing.
But
last thing you want to do as a pilot.
Exactly. But if it happens, we have insurance coverage for that, and we want to make sure that at first it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, we've got you covered for that, and we'll walk you through all that process. There will be forms to fill out.
Gotcha.
Okay. So now we've got an FPV drone, and then someone else intrudes upon your airspace, and you didn't see it. That worries me.
Okay.
Because, FPV drones, you should have a spotter with you to help you monitor for that. Now, if it's, legitimately an accident and, you were trying to avoid and they still crash into you, that happens. But the first thing that we're going to ask in that scenario is, did you take any evasive maneuvers? And if you didn't have a VO standing next to you alerting to you to that drone in your airspace, why didn't you?
Gotcha.
Right? That becomes an operational human factors error.
Okay.
Because if you had someone there, the chances of you hitting that other person would have been, or being hit by that other person would have been significantly less. So hopefully if you're doing for FPV activities for the university, you either have Eric or someone else with you as you're doing your flight operations, specifically for helping you navigate, orient, and look for things that you can't see because you got your FPV goggles in place.
Okay.
Now, we're not necessarily going to be looking to assign blame for those activities, but remember that this is insurance, and insurance people don't like to pay money.
Yep.
Right? So and I do have to fight insurance for a number of cases too, but they are going to be looking for every opportunity to not pay out.
Totally.
And so we don't want to give them ammunition. So if you're doing FPV, especially if you're doing it for the university, make sure that you have a spotter for that and the birds and everything else that could go wrong that you might miss out on because you have the goggles covering your face.
Gotcha. For my next question is, let's see. I guess like going through some of the, like bad scenarios, like what are some of like the worst scenarios that have occurred on campus before?
Okay. I mean, I can't tell you everything.
That's
we
fine.
do have some amount of confidentiality with reports and things like that. But we've had some fires that have occurred, burning down significant amounts of property.
Okay.
Luckily, we haven't caused any structural damages, significant structural damages.
Okay.
But I mean, drones are like any other piece of equipment. They crash, they break, they cause accidents, they're involved in accidents, they get stolen, right? Just like any other piece of equipment out there.
Gotcha.
There's nothing other than the fact that they fly, right? There's nothing unique about them compared to any other camera system out there.
Gotcha.
They get stolen, they cause fires, they break, all sorts of other things. They poke holes in walls, they hurt people, cuts, bruises, and things like that. In terms of our drone safety, we've had some incidents like that. But one things that's actually very common isn't drone related. It's
Not drone related.
people trip and fall while operating the drone.
Okay, gotcha.
That
That's
would
the
be
first
one of
for
the
me.
more common
That is-
situations that we run into.
I see.
The other one to also keep in mind, statistically speaking, you are more likely to get hurt driving to and from wherever you're going than you are operating the drone.
Okay.
Car accidents, right?
Okay.
Statistically speaking, that's where you're more likely to get yourself hurt with so many of the things that we care about safety-wise. But again, people driving cars is the weak point in all of our safety programs.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I wanted to return to the insurance. So say, for example, I am like employed by UCSD and I'm a part of that. So if I submit a flight request, how do I know if I have insurance?
If you submit a flight request and Eric's confirmed that you're operating under the guise of the university, it's automatic.
Automatic. So
Automatic.
I don't have to add any documents or
No.
anything like that. Okay.
Yeah, it's just automatic.
And then if it's third party, then it's submitting my own like a certificate of insurance.
Yep.
Gotcha.
All right, and that's something that Eric handles so well here because it's a lot sometimes.
He's on top of it.
He is. He really is. What's unique about the drone insurance too? So general and commercial liability policies typically, very commonly exclude drones.
Okay.
You need to have aviation coverage.
Aviation coverage.
Aviation coverage in order to get coverage for drone liability.
Gotcha.
And so, not so much now, but in the early days of Part 107s, there was a lot of confusion over that. And people would send me their insurance information and go, no, this isn't acceptable because you didn't read the fine print. It specifically says no drones, no aircraft. And drones count as aircraft. And this was actually even a lawsuit, not here for the UC, but elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
That drones are considered aircraft, and therefore you need aircraft liability coverage, not general coverage.
Gotcha.
So that's why there are specialty organizations for drone insurance. like Skywatch and things like that.
Skywatch.
That you could buy drone insurance even by the hour.
By the hour.
Like $10.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Right? And that's, one of the easy way. You're not operating a drone for more than an hour anyways. So $10 for insurance coverage.
Gotcha. I guess another thing is the drone itself. So if I'm an aspiring pilot that wants to fly on campus, what are some of the requirements that I need to meet?
For the drone itself?
Yeah. So for example, for me as an FPV pilot, the criteria is prop cards, sub 250, and remote ID. Is there anything else that needs to be mentioned?
Okay. Well, right. We try not to make requirements at a UC level.
Okay.
If anything, we just make sure that you're compliant with the FAA regulations.
Okay.
Right. So if you're doing this as a 107 pilot, doesn't matter what size, you'll need remote ID.
Okay.
Right. If it's over, it doesn't matter what size. Right. If you're a 107, it needs to be registered individually. But beyond that, we are flexible, and we're not going to mandate like specific return to home requirements unless mandated by some other requirement.
Gotcha.
And it does happen though, right? So we do have some operational waivers.
Okay.
For flying above 400 feet, for operating over people, for flying in inclement weather conditions, and those will specify it must have return to home functionality.
Gotcha.
Right? It must be able to, at the click of a button, fly itself home, which maybe your FPV drone doesn't or can't meet, in which case you wouldn't be able to operate under that waiver.
Gotcha.
Now, making those determinations is something that Eric and myself will have to do.
Okay.
Right? So you tell me what you're doing, and if you're operating under a waiver, we're going to double check to make sure that you're going to be compliant with that waiver. So
Gotcha.
that's part of our review process when it comes up. We get to be real experts on waivers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. And I would say about 70% of the drone stuff is pretty much like a rubber stamp, because you're doing good, safe stuff in a farmland where nothing really can go wrong.
Okay.
It's the other 30% of on-campus activities of flying above 400 feet, or if we've got other aircraft in the sky, things like helicopters, controlled aerospace, all sorts of other things. And then we really have to spend our time going into the details to make sure that we're meeting all the regulatory requirements for compliance.
Okay. Gotcha.
So we have some waivers that we actually need to have a very detailed flight plan documented, reviewed, along with a maintenance log in order for using that waiver.
Gotcha. So when it comes to the waiver, do we as the pilot have to fill it out, or is it something you guys do on your end?
Depends on who, right?
Okay.
So if you're a university, Eric can file for that, I can file that, and then if Eric files for it, then it's applicable to all UC San Diego employees.
Gotcha.
If I file for it, it's applicable to the entire UC system.
Okay.
But if you're coming in as the third party, you need to supply your own. Because we can't speak for you.
Okay. Gotcha. I think that's pretty much it for my questions, honestly. I think it's also getting close to noon, so you have to go at noon. I want to respect your time. But I think that's about it.
Great meeting with you, and we're here to help guide you and to answer questions. It's in my best interest for there to be more drones out there, because the director of drones, if no one's flying drones, then I don't have a job, right?
Yeah.
So I want you flying more drones. So let me know how I can make sure that you're able to keep flying drones safely, legally, and putting up great footage so that more people want to fly drones.
I got you. I'll actually send you like a video series that I'm trying to do for future pilots, and I would like your second opinion on it.
Okay.
And from there, that's pretty much it. I'll send you an email though.
Yeah. Perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah.